Hello, I want to make another video about the subject of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh, something that I discussed recently. It's good I can see my tefillin, So, again, what extent does this go to Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lezeh? How far does it go? How far, what does it mean? And again, I think the inyan is that we don't have bias on other people. We don't have bias on everybody. We don't have bias. We don't have ownership. Arvus is not bias. You understand? To be a raven, to be co-signers, to be guarantors, does not give you ownership of what other people do. And so, people get upset when famous Jewish people who are Orthodox, might do things that don't go in accordance to their particular community's standards when they're following the standards of the community that they belong to, because different communities have different standards. Within the realm of halacha, and the way that Chazal said, doesn't mean that there's only one psak halacha for everything, and different piskei halacha are not necessarily meant for every occasion. The individuals who asked the shaila at the time. So what might apply to one community doesn't necessarily apply to another, and yet people feel like, for example, they feel in many occasions, and this is also part of the progressive ideology. Like, for example, progressive, what they call liberal, but they're not liberal, they're really very close-minded. They'll be upset at different Jewish practices that are old practices. Maybe some are older than others. Kaparas, Mitzitza Pepeh, different things like this that are not embraced even among all Orthodox Jews. Some do and some don't. And because, some of these seem a little out of the ordinary to a lot of people, these are things, what they forget is we live in America where there's freedom of religion, and of course, the progressive movement is trying to get rid of that. They're trying to say, there's limits to religious freedom, but the founders didn't intend like that. Of course, there are limits. You can't kill somebody, but and then also a lot of it has to do with they'll bring, false things, false science, really to extend their agenda, which really, as we've seen, the progressive movement has an agenda against religious freedom in general, I mean, in reality, the most major examples are like, bakeries and florists and things that are being forced to bake cakes or things that go against their religious beliefs as Christians or as Jews or as Muslims and so forth. And, in reality, what we have to explain is that, to force a Christian who believes according to their church, there's not just one Christianity. There are many different groups of Christians, many different churches. Some are more left-wing, some are more right-wing, some are more centrist, just like we have in Judaism, just as there exists in all different religions and different groups and so forth. So, people are trying to say, well, you have to bake a cake for this event, and if not, you're discriminating. And their answer should be, I'm not discriminating against the person. If this person wants me to bake cake, I'm happy to bake for the person, just I don't want to bake the cake for the ceremony that my religion prohibits me to participate in. It's just the same, and it's not saying I don't serve this type of person, and those people asking for the cake to be baked for that ceremony, it's like asking a Jewish, kosher bakery or Muslim halal, restaurant, bakery, whatever. You go into a Jewish, kosher restaurant, you ask for pork, or a halal Muslim restaurant, you ask for pork. They say, well, this is a kosher restaurant, this is a halal restaurant, we don't serve pork. And they say, oh, you're discriminating against me because I'm not, someone who says, he's a Christian, he eats pork, and he's going to say you're discriminating against Christians by not serving pork at the kosher restaurant or at the halal restaurant. That's the exact same thing. So no, you're welcome to come eat here, I just can't serve you pork, because we don't serve pork at a kosher restaurant. It goes further than that, because all right, there's no Isser Hana on pork. I don't know about Islam. Islam, for example, has an Isser Hana on alcohol. That I do know. I think they probably also have Isser Hana on pork. So it would actually be a sin for the Muslim to even serve pork on different plates. It's not trafing up his plates. I don't know if they have all these laws of blias and tarfus like we have, but I know there are certain cultures who have similar ideas. But so what about the? But like in Judaism, pork is not an Isser Hana. It's just we're not. It's just. It seems maybe it's a din d'Rabbanan or a takana, whatever, that we don't make mischar in it, but you technically are allowed to have hanoah from it. But there are Yisrei hanoah like basar b'chalav. There are things that are prohibited to have benefit from, like meat and milk that's cooked together, like chametz on Pesach, like leaven on Passover. Those things are Isrei Hanoah. That means that even you can't even feed it to a dog. You can't do business in it. You can't and chametz you can't even own on Pesach. So therefore, the same thing with the question with Hobby Lobby. To say, oh, you're trampling on people's rights. No, you can go buy yourself your own separate policy with the money I'm paying you, and buy the that covers these things that my religion prohibits. I'm not trying to trample on your rights and freedoms to do what you wish, but you can't force me to pay you with this thing. Meaning, in Hobby Lobby with the questions of abortion, contraception, whatever, we could compare it to, like, in Judaism, if someone's saying, well, I want you to pay me in cheeseburgers. Well, I'm not allowed to pay you in cheeseburgers. It's Isser Hanoah. Pork is a different thing, but even though we don't eat pork, we could technically pay a non-Jewish worker with pork. We believe it's wrong for a non-Jew. We don't believe it's wrong for a non-Jew to eat pork, and we don't believe it's wrong for a non-Jew to eat cheeseburgers. Cheeseburgers is Isser Hanoah. So you can't force me to pay you with cheeseburgers. If you want, I'll pay you cash and you go buy cheeseburgers yourself. It's a different thing. It extends in a lot of other areas as well. We discussed this story here with the in Boca Raton, was this person, the guest speaker, who described his religious philosophy as having missionary zeal. That doesn't necessarily make him a missionary, and also, even if he is, there's different types of missionaries. The word missionary is misused in our community to a certain extent. In reality, Chabad Shluchim are also missionaries. They're out on a mission. That's what it means. All right, so maybe but they're only going after Jews. They're not going. But what about they're not, for the most part, although they have the Sheva Mitzvahs campaign, whatever. In reality, a Catholic missionary is very much like a Chabad Shliach. They're really just going after their own kind for the most part, except, they're not as close-minded. They'll welcome someone. In Chabad, they're not so welcoming of Gerim, which they should be. They're violating halacha, but that's neither here nor there. But that's their own business, and it's not my business to tell them not to. I'm just, they can do what they want, follow their own Rabbanim. So it's not my job to tell them what they're doing is wrong, because they have their own Rabbanim. They're supposed to follow their own Rabbanim, and they're doing the right thing by following their own Rabbanim. And that's my point. And that's why I think, for me, what I've seen, one of the healthiest approaches that I've seen in the Orthodox community, and a lot of people, because there's a lot of propaganda in the media, always disparaging them, the healthiest approach that I've found vis-a-vis other communities has been which will surprise a lot of people, is really the Satmar approach. There's a lot of propaganda and this and that, but in reality, in practice, because meaning the Satmar, they'll say what everybody else is doing is wrong, but they'll also say, first of all, the Satmar Rav used to say, all the Rebbes say everybody else is wrong and only they're right. And the Satmar Rav said, I agree everybody else is wrong, but I'm also wrong. Meaning there's a certain level of humility that has to come in, that we have to admit that we might not always know exactly how to render a Psak Halacha, but we do the best we can. And there has to be a certain amount of humility in rendering a Psak Halacha, but also the Shmini Shebeshminas, that there has to be a certain amount of Azaz Kedusha as well. You have to find the balance. Someone was saying to me, "Oh, look at it. We have a president. He's so arrogant that goes against the basic ideas of all religions." That's not true. Reb Nachman Breslover talks, about Azus de Kedusha. You have to be proud. There is a certain place for what people would call arrogance, pride of holiness, and there's a place for that. You don't have to be so ashamed of holiness. You should be proud when you're doing something good, and that helps you and aids you in being better and better. But also we see in the Bible, we see King Saul, after he lost his kingdom. Why? Because Samuel told him, go and kill the Amalekites, and the people said, well, maybe we want to keep some of the sheep for sacrifices, and so he had mercy, and because you're going to kill them anyway, so we'll kill them as sacrifices. And Samuel said no, but he said he was afraid of the people. So then Samuel said to Saul, you might be small in your own eyes, but God appointed you to be the king, and you have to have a certain amount of pride. And so these qualities we see in the president are actually very positive for him, for his leadership roles, to accomplish what he needs to accomplish. Now, weiter. With these other cases, someone was upset at me. I said, someone wrote on Twitter recently, if whatever his opinion on something, and I said, it's really none of our business to tell other people what to do. And he had a whole argument, and then he wound up attacking me, saying that I'm not Orthodox, and I said, I'm a chayta machtes rabbim. I'm a sinner, and I've even caused other people to sin, and I feel bad for them. I'm trying to do tshuva, but I'm not perfect in my orthopraxy, but I strive very much to adhere to strict orthodoxy, to believe. He called me a denier. That's one thing to be proper in, is at least to have the right hashkafa. A lot of the Chassidish Sfarim, they say like this, that when it comes to actions, people are flawed and they have a hard time. Satmarovs have to have the right emunah, and I certainly hope that I hold on to the Yud Gimel Ikrei emunah. I certainly hope that I truly believe them and demonstrate that belief. And I believe that these things are true. These are the dogmas of Judaism. These are what we call orthodoxy. But on the other hand, there's the other side to the question. Meaning, what are the limits? Where do we draw lines? And the thing is, so for example, even the Satmarov spoke out very much in his own community against certain things, against certain ideas, and I believe he's right. He, in his actual interactions with other communities, is always very cordial and fulfilled the mitzvah of Ahavas Yisrael, and in general was a cordial and polite and pleasant person. I never met him, he passed away before I was born, but that's what I've been told from the people who did meet him. And he was very down to earth, very normal, and in general, the Satmar community, that's what I see in the Hungarian community. It's not just Satmar, but in general, even though in their own ideology they're very strict, in their own practice they're very strict, they're not looking so much to impose their stringencies on other people, and even their own customs are not, meaning other Hasidic groups, it's like all about, you have to follow the custom, exactly what the rabbi does, and exactly like this. And by the Hungarians, that was never such a big Inyan. It was always just like, do what your family does, do what feels good to you. You don't have to go and ask a rabbi every little thing, And it's a very healthy approach, I think, And more than that, so I remember there was a Maisa. If I mentioned this on the video before, and I was speaking in a shul, so I couldn't really. I had to be politically correct because I was talking in front of from people. And I know there's from people watching. Maybe they're uncomfortable with what I'm going to say, but there was a Maisa a few years ago. A horrible disaster took place in the Williamsburg community. A very choshev balabas, a big Baal Tzedakah. I met him once. I don't really remember specifically, but I know that I did meet him once. His son told me, Menachem Stark, Hashem Yimkom Damo, a very fine person who did tremendously good things. He was a very great philanthropist, and he was murdered. And so, who came to visit him? There were two very prominent rabbis in New York, Rabbi Avi Weiss and Rabbi Joe Potasnik. Both graduates of YU. They were friends in yeshiva, and their ideas are certainly much different than the Satmar ideas, and also much different from 90% of the Orthodox world. But Rabbi Weiss certainly is Orthodox, even though he calls it open Orthodox. And Rabbi Potasnik is a very Hamish person, a wonderful person, a nice person, a very warm person. And as far as I know, he's Orthodox and Orthoprax in his own personal life. But he served as a rabbi in a synagogue that was not Orthoprax, which many Orthodox rabbis do. For the sake of Kira, for the sake of Parnasa, for many reasons. And really, because it's needed. They serve a very great purpose in doing this. It's not just for money. It's not even just for Kiriv. It's really these pastoral roles, especially Rabbi Potasnik, who's such a talented person. He fills, just like Avi Weiss, also very talented. They're very talented people, and they're fulfilling roles that need to be fulfilled. And however, maybe Rabbi Potasnik not as much, because he doesn't wave a banner of orthodoxy, but Rabbi Weiss more so. Rabbi Weiss, in many communities, is considered a pariah, an outcast, and especially in yeshivish communities and in the right wing of the modern Orthodox communities. But in reality, my feeling is like this: is that what Rabbi Avi Weiss is doing is really just what modern Orthodoxy was in America for generations, and yes, there has been a right turn in the Orthodox world, and there's positive things in that, but also there are certain people who get alienated because of that, and so Rabbi Weiss is really keeping them in the fold of Torah because of that. Because he's identifying the people who don't even... I was Rav out of town for 5 years. It was in Richmond, Virginia. And there were a few Orthodox shuls. There was the Chabad, there was Yeshiva, but there were two modern Orthodox shuls. There was... my shul was the Young Israel, and it was even more to the right of most Young Israels, and it's both in its founding and in its... It was a very Hamish, almost yeshivish shul. The closest thing you could get to Yeshiva Shul in Richmond, Virginia, for sure. And then there was KBI, which was a classical modern Orthodox shul. And at one point, the mechitza at KBI was raised a little bit, and so the Bnei Yeshiva people who lived closer to there started davening there. And that was the downfall of the shul Kol Emes, the Young Israel shul, where I was the Rav. That was before I even came there. All of this took place, and I tried to save it, but it was very difficult. It was an uphill battle. But my feeling was, and at the time when I was there, they had a very frum Rav there, as he was a big Talmid Chacham, but very very frum, extremely frum Rav there at this other shul KBI. And people, they assumed that the Rav they had before was much more easygoing, had a certain liberal attitudes, but was what he held strongly. He strongly. He wasn't just totally liberal, but he was very friendly and very personable and very popular. Whereas and then this Rav also went to the same yeshivas that the previous Rav had gone to, so they felt, he's going to be the same because he's from the same yeshivas, but his personality was much different. He was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, very talented person, but where he fit in was more in a frum community and not in a more modern community like that. he fit in more in like the the right wing of YU today, like a Rav Herschel Schechter, Rav Willig, that type of more where he fit in. He didn't fit in with like a Avi Weiss type of crowd, Whereas the other rabbi before him was more liberal, fit in more with the more liberal crowd, and that shul was mixed. You had, and really initially, all the more frumer people davened in the Young Israel, and the more modern people, and a lot of people weren't Shomer Shabbos or davened in the other shul. And he thought it was cute. He didn't. He's like, well, they go there because of family connections or whatever, but they're not really serious. He didn't see the milas, even though he learned Hasidus and everything, and he probably should have been more cognizant. But in the end, it wasn't a good fit, and he almost didn't. He almost lost his contract, and when he saw the writing on the wall, he left and he went to a shul that's more fitting for him, a more frumer shul, a more chashuv shul, that type of place where he would fit in. But my feeling all the time was that no, that shul needed more of a YCT type rabbi, and the Bnei Yeshiva should daven at the Young Israel or daven in the yeshiva. At that point, they had the yeshiva, so they didn't really need the Young Israel anymore, except the Young Israel had a mikveh. All right, now they built a mikveh, and Baruch Hashem, the Young Israel is a girls' school now. The building stayed in Jewish hands. All right, they still owe me some money, but that's a different story. I don't know, all right, that's the situation there. My feeling was, of course, nobody has to listen to me, but my feeling was that shul should have been the more modern shul. They should have gone more to the left, and they found a rabbi who was more. The new rabbi they got was more fitting to them. I don't know him personally, but I think he's a much better fit. Nothing negative about the other rabbi. The other rabbi was a tremendous Talmid Chacham and very frum and he was a very friendly person. He wasn't the right fit for the more modern crowd that was there. He was a fit for the frumer crowd. We were modern Orthodox, but the right wing modern Orthodox. What they call something modern Orthodox Machmir or whatever. So. I mentioned it was a video in Yiddish. I mentioned this before. There was this story back then when I was a Rav there. They usually had Meal Mart meat, and I was very happy. There was one store, even though it wasn't a Jewish store, but they shipped in from New York kosher food, and they had Meal Mart meat. And at a certain point, sometimes they had Meal Mart, and sometimes also, and then back then there was Vineland chicken, so they had Vineland chicken also. So I was very happy. I had all Satmar, both behemoth flesh and chicken. At a certain point, they and sometimes they even had turkeys from Vineland, whatever. I was very happy. Then at a certain point, they had Chabad chickens, and they had Solomon's behemoth flesh. And this was before Solomon's had the square hechsher. It just had OU, didn't have any other hechsher. And they also had they also had in the freezer section, like frozen in the boxes, Meal Mart. So like even for chicken, I would eat like chicken nuggets for Shabbos because that was Meal Mart, and I didn't want to eat Empire or David Elliott. Not that there's anything wrong with it, just I have guests or Satmar, and even I myself, if I was in someone else's house, I would eat it. I would eat Empire or David Elliott, whatever. But my own house, I wanted to keep it only Satmar, and even now, I now I don't really go to other people's houses. I mean, I don't, if I'm a guest somewhere, I don't ask whose shechita it was, but usually it's Meal Mart, whatever, or whatever it is, neither here nor there. But the point is, at one point, so I felt like in the shul also I want to keep that standard, because again we had guests from different places, even though a lot of times those guests would bring their own food, whatever, but we had guests who would come from Kiryas Yol, whatever. But there was one point when they said, well, can we buy but I would let them have David Elliott or whatever. Just the issue was that in the shul there was they wanted to have the Solomon's that only had the OU. It didn't have the Skvera Hechsher yet. It had the Skvera Hechsher, of course. It only had the OU. So I told the Rosh Kol, I told the president of the shul, I don't want to use this in the shul. If you want to serve cold cuts, a different thing, but to cook in the shul, this meat with just the OU, not that it's not kosher, I just don't feel it's kosher, it's glatt, it's not the standard for our shul. So then first the president of the shul said, oh, you're being extreme. I said, you're a Talmud of what's his name, in Baltimore, Rav Heinemann. I said, call Rav Heinemann, see what he has to say. Yes, Rav Heinemann said, no, you for the time being, you should not use this flesh. That's what he said. Even it has OU, for the time being, I wouldn't recommend it until we find out more about whose shechita it is or whatever. So I was vindicated. So, but then the president of our shul had to go email the Rav and the other shul and say, maybe we should tell Westbury Market they shouldn't have any more this fleisch because this meat. And the Rav of the other shul said, what are you talking about? It's OU, it's glatt, what's wrong with it? And I want to say to the president of the shul, this is not for them. That's a modern shul. Of course they could have that. Then even you could have it in your house. I don't have a problem. You want to listen to Rav Heinemann, so don't have it in your house. I was just saying in our shul I didn't want to have it. And in my own home I wouldn't want to have it. But of course you could. But to go and tell the Rav of the other shul, that's none of your business. So anyway, back to the story with Menachem Stark. So he was who came to pay Shiva call was Rabbi Avi Weiss and Rabbi Joe Potasnik went to a Shiva call. So when they were about to leave, and they said it was very pleasant, it was a sad place, it was a Shiva call, but when they were about to leave, they asked which way to the subway. And they said, how can we let Choshev Rabbanim like you go on a subway? Our rabbis don't ride on subways. They go on a car service, whatever. We'll drive you ourselves. So one was the Spinker Rebbe's Gaba. He drove. So Joe Potasnik lives in Brooklyn, so it wasn't a big trip for him. Avi Weiss lives all the way in the Bronx. So the Spinker Rebbe's Gaba went and drove Rabbi Weiss back home, and so Rabbi Weiss said, don't drop me at my house, drop me in the yeshiva. He went to ICT, and he said, I want you to come in, and they danced the whole yeshiva because they were so happy, the Achdus of Klal Yisrael. And that's what it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. We're not here to impose on other communities our standards. Everybody has their own standard, and I feel that's a very healthy approach. And people have to be knowledgeable in halacha to know the difference between chumras and halachas. Just like we wouldn't tell a Sephardi you can't eat kitnios. We wouldn't tell someone who's Litvish you can't eat gebrocks. It's that's what I mean. Although Lubavitch, they like to do that. They like to impose these things on other people. That's not the way it's supposed to be. Like I remember I heard Rabbi Shmuel Butman on the radio. And he was like, you hear a lot about gebroks and not gebroks, and Baruch Hashem, you're hearing more and more about not gebroks. This was 15 years ago. Now it's even more so. And I'm like, what do you mean Baruch Hashem? You're hearing more about not gebroks. It's not. What's the nafkamina? That's what we do. That's not for everybody. If you're part of a particular community, so you don't eat gebroks, it's not a halacha. Are you serious? A lot of people, and then it works the other way too, because then you hear certain people, like there's this guy in Israel, I forget what's his name. He has this whole organization and things. He makes videos, and he says, the Ashkenazim have to, and he himself, I think, is of Ashkenazi descent, although it might not. I think actually he is Sephardi. I think his name is Rabbi Bar Chaim. I don't remember his name. So I think with Rabbi Bar Chaim, he said, the Ashkenazim should start eating kitnios. Like, no, everybody has their own communities. It's beautiful that we have this diversity, and it's not anybody's business, what other people do. All right, if someone, although I agree, to a certain extent, you have people who are not frum, they're not even Shomer Shabbos, but then they start keeping Pesach and they see it as a big burden. Maybe people like that who aren't frum, even people are intermarried, maybe we should let them know that it's okay to eat kitnios, some people get so confused, even if they're Ashkenazi, maybe there's room for that. But a frum person, Chassidish Yid, whatever, not going to start eating kitnios. So, a frum Ashkenazi person, a frum Sephardi, of course, and there's nothing wrong with it. And, if someone accepts all the Sephardi minhagim, they could also eat kitnios. I remember there was some people, they started to accept the Sephardi minhagim, they accept all the minhagim. And I said, "Are you going to eat kitnios?" I said, "No, because that's." I said, "No. If you're really accepting all this Sephardim and Hagim, you can also eat kitnios. There's nothing. It's not an issue there. I know friends of mine are going to say, no, everyone should eat kitnios. But I don't know. I recognize there's two sides of this, and certainly the derivatives of kitnios, even Litvish people could eat it. The Hasidim wouldn't eat it, but the Litvish people should be able to eat it because Rabbi Moshe said it's okay, and Rabbi Yochanan Spector said there were a lot of big Litvish Rabbanim who allowed, corn syrup and stuff like that. So really, it should be mutter. And the other thing, what I don't understand, there's the Chai Adam, who said you should be able to make kitnios into matzahs. And why we don't make kitnios matzahs? Because that's already the tzura of should be true, and l'maisa I don't see anybody doing that. But I do know people who l'maisa use corn syrup, but they should also be able to make kitnios matzahs. Everybody, but everyone should follow their own rabbanim and their own piskei din. That's how it is. Everyone has their own das Torah that they follow, and the modern Orthodox are 100% in their right for following the more liberal das Torah. And a lot of things, the more liberal people will be more machmir in other things. It's not just being totally b'shat nefesh to be liberal. I have a friend of mine, he had this shiloh, maybe to have a heter merabanim, and he asked his rav, and he said, no, we don't. So I said, so why don't you go to Haredi Bezdin, go to Haredi Rabbanim, get a heter merabanim? This is not the standard in our community. He wound up paying a lot of money to go and to give a get instead of the heter merabanim, and I applaud him for that. He's a big tzaddik for that. Another story, I'm not going to say whoever, I'm not going to say it's the same person, it's not the same person, it's not a nafkamina. But anyway, there was someone from, again, this modern community, from Avi Weiss's community. He said wherever he goes to Lakewood, he goes to Crown Heights, he goes to Washington Heights, he's a pariah. But he goes to Monroe, he goes to Williamsburg, they treat him like everybody else. They say, he's a modern rabbi, but the modern Jews need modern rabbis. Modern Jews don't need Hasidic rabbis. Modern Jews need modern rabbis, And so they sat him up front with other rabbis. It was in the Spinkabis Medrash also. And they said, Madena Rabbanim for Madena Yidin, Chusha v'gas mahatu. And that's how it's supposed to be. Within our own communities, we have our own standards, but within other communities, we have to have tolerance of the other communities. And I know people are going to be upset at me for saying this, but I really believe that that's part of the beauty of Yiddishkeit, that we have. Shivim Palmul Torah. We have Yud Beis Shvatim. There are certain things that go outside of the spectrum. There are certain things that go beyond the pale. Things that are outright heresy are beyond the pale. Things that are obviously violations of halacha, and that are even, but there are certain things that are gray areas, and you have to know what, when, and where to use, when to be mekel and when to be machmir, and it says, adav koich dehetera, that it takes a bigger Talmud Chacham to figure out when to be makel and when to find a heter, and when to, but who, what, and where, and when, and you always, and also to discuss the different sides. Like someone called me today with a shaila about Yantav Shenish Begalias, and he's maybe that, all the different things, and he used to be by Chabad, Baruch Hashem, he's more normal now, whatever. He whatever it is, I said to him, in Chabad, and I was talking to him because I thought with Chabad, I said, well, in Chabad they follow the Rambam, and he said, no, I'm not Chabad anymore. But and I had to think, and I had to get the right information to render psak, and I'm still uncomfortable, but I feel that I have enough information to be makel, but still there's enough time to ask bigger rabbanim than me. But at first I said the easy thing to do, but and I told him that, and I said I really don't want to render a psak to be. I said to give a psak to be machmir is easy, but he had very good reasons to be makel, and very easy to render psak to be machmir and to say no, you have to keep 2 days yantiv. That's an easy thing to do, but from the information that he gave me, I felt comfortable enough to tell him he most likely should be able to keep 1 day yantiv, according to the Ashkenazi psak. Of course, according to Chabad and according to Sfardim, it wouldn't be allowed to, because the Rambam holds that you hold yantiv like however you are, and that the Indian of Dater Lachzor doesn't come into play. According to Ashkenazi understanding, Dater Lachzor is comes into play, whether you're planning to return to wherever you are, and then so whatever it is, but he is from the Ashkenazi stock, and he follows Ashkenazi minhagim. I felt mistama I could give him a heter, even though to keep only 1 day yantiv, because he most likely is planning to go back to Israel. But I didn't want to render a total psak. But I said, to render the psak to be machmir, that's the easy thing. But to be mekel, that takes a certain level, be a Talmid Chacham, and I'm not 100% comfortable to recognize I'm not a big enough Talmid Chacham. But from what I heard, Lefi Aniyas Daiti, Mistama, he should be able to find certain heterim, but I'm going to discuss with other rabbanim and so forth, and try to come to a proper conclusion. But what it seems to me is he has al malismeich. But also you have to understand where people are coming from, and if someone is a part of a particular community, meaning if he was still identifying as Chabad, absolutely I would not give him a heter, because first of all he has to listen to his own Chabad Rabbanim, and I have nothing against Chabad as the original movement, the movement of the Alter Rebbe and of the Tzemach Tzedek, the Mittler Rebbe, these big tzaddikim is very holy, even though I might have disagreements, I might follow other tzaddikim, even Hashkafa, I might follow other opinions that are choylek on the Tanya, but that doesn't mean that I have anything against the Tanya. I mean, it's just a certain thing, and I feel that certain things are misinterpreted by people. Certain things people interpret the Tanya to be racist. It's not be'etzem racist, it's just that people are interpreting it in a racist way. Both the people who oppose the Tanya interpret in racist ways, and people who claim the Tanya also interpret it in racist ways. And that's not Toradic, and a lot of people want to say that it's really a machlokes, and I really don't believe it's machlokes. I really believe that be'etzem, the idea of the Jewish soul and so forth, is not racist at all. Even though, again, there are Rishonim that have different approaches, different. There are different arguments you can make for the be'etzem. It's hard to say, which side. But again, they're different. There are Chilukei Deis, and there's room for the Chilukei Deis. But I personally feel more comfortable with the non-racist, anti-racist component, which also works the other way, to say that there's a certain point where a Yid loses his Jewish soul, just being and there are Rishonim that say like that, and Mekubalim who say like that. Rabbi Yitzchak Miyako was a Talmud Ramban, he was a Mekubal, and he says that there are people who are born Jewish that don't have Jewish souls. So, and that also takes away the racist aspect of it, meaning Judaism is religion and not a race. I heard that from Rav Aryeh Bar Tzadok. So I didn't say David B'Shem right, but that's B'etzem really what it's all about. So anyway, I just want to talk a little bit about these ideas, get them out there. Let's see what do other people have to do. I'm sorry I spoke for so long. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll look forward to joining you for more videos. God bless.